and welcome to Hidden History Stories from the Secret City. I'm Keith McDaniel, along with my co-host Ray Smith. Hello, Ray.
Hello, Keith. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Well, today we're going to finish up our series that we've been doing with Benita Albert on the
Right.
graduates of Oak Ridge High School and their accomplishments. Uh, and so we'll just get right into it then. Benita?
All right, Renita, just go ahead.
Good afternoon. I am up to the 2000s, and we are going to look at a couple from the new century. And then we're going to step backwards because I had two more published since then. So if the chronology seems strange to you, that's the reason. Okay. So meet Catherine Jouet. She was class of 2009, Oak Ridge High School. And she was a tuition student. So, I've covered all sorts of different scenarios. Catherine was educated in the Knox County schools. Both of her parents were UT professors, so they lived in Knoxville. But she met many Oak Ridge students via Chinese Saturday classes and got interested in what they were telling her the program could be and chose to come to Oak Ridge High School, as did her younger brother eventually. Catherine was a dynamo, absolute plus for Oak Ridge High School. She walked in the door ready to create new opportunities for Oak Ridge School. She founded the Oak Ridge High School Philosophy Club, which has thrived since then. She was a leader in science Olympiads and science bowl competitions, including several national trips. And she would highly recommend that because that's where she met her future husband. He was the opposition and quite a fierce bit of opposition. They later connected at the university level. She was my math thesis student, and she, along with a friend, had formed a team that studied how microbial communities could be engineered to produce ethanol from leftover plant material. And what she said about that in retrospect, in interviewing her, was, what we did at Oak Ridge High School was uncannily similar to my current work in evolutionary biology.
Wow.
She was multi-talented. She was an artist, and I love telling this story. We always participated. My homerooms always participated in the Homecoming Door Prize, and that was a matter of competing against some true artists across the school who created awesome door signs. Well, Catherine said, we need to do this. And she really did the bulk of the work. They drew a huge wildcat holding a bouquet of daisies, and the petals were dripping off of the daisies down to the bottom of the door. And in case that doesn't sound like what a wildcat would do, our foe was Soddy Daisy. And we won it. And we won a big Chick-fil-A breakfast, which everybody enjoyed, thanks to Catherine. But she was just so energetic. And that energy went on to Harvard. At Harvard, she became known as just a remarkable science writer, won some prizes for her science writing. And after that, on to the University of Washington for graduate school. And there she formed another group that continues, much like the Oak Ridge High School philosophy group. This one is called the Genome Salon. You can actually look it up under the University of Washington website. And it talks about hot button science issues, whatever. She said about that, she said it was easy to do. I just used the same principles I learned in forming the Oak Ridge High School Philosophy Club.
Wow.
She is now at Stanford University, and she's performing postdoc studies in disease spread. And she described her work, and I quote her, as, I study evolution in the environmental world, where it can happen in a matter of days or weeks. For example, flu, which was her primary study there, COVID later, and she mentioned those as two very timely concerns. So she's taken her research and her energy and whatever and applied it to not only her work at Stanford, but she has become a noted science writer. And in 2021 has at least two that I could find. There may have been a third one, publications in the New Yorker magazine that were very, very, very interesting. For 2021, we were a year plus a bit into COVID. In February, she wrote about the awful uncertainty of the coronavirus death toll, the problems with record keeping, statistics, et cetera. And then later in that year, I think in the summer, she wrote an article called Coexisting with the Coronavirus. She's only just begun. I understand it now. She is still completing a postdoc, and she and her husband as well at Stanford completing his postdoc, and they are looking for the next opportunity in life. When we published her article, Ray, you may remember they honeymooned in the Galapagos Islands. Very appropriate for two biologists. Her husband is also a biologist.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And then in 2010, bringing it up to a new decade, meet Lindsay Lee. Lindsay started at Willowbrook, went on to Robertsville Middle School, and then to Oak Ridge High School. Lindsay was a remarkable student in so many ways. And so I don't want to lead with this without saying first that it would not be the most important thing she would necessarily want me to say, but it has been a fact of her life that she has been wheelchair bound since 7th grade due to muscular dystrophy complications. At Oak Ridge High School, she didn't, or at Robertsville as well, she didn't let that slow her down. She attended Model United Nations. And I remember after writing Lindsay's story, I ran into her history teacher, who I believe may have accompanied her on one of those Model United Nations trips or on another special trip to Gettysburg. And of course, Lindsay would always need to keep in mind that access could be an issue. Well, it definitely was an issue in Gettysburg because she couldn't go to the Tennessee Soldiers Memorial on the battleground. And so her teacher, Lindsay, and others advocated for handicap access, and that was enacted because of Lindsay's desire that it be so. Lindsay was my student for 2 years in AP Calculus and Calculus 2, and she was also a math thesis student, and she did those last 2 courses in the same year. She would come to my classroom at 6:30 every morning. I was there, trying to get some work done myself. And because I was there, lots of students would show up, but Lindsay was steadfast. She was there every day, and she would work with fellow students. It wasn't that she needed to come in for help. She would work with fellow students, though. She just enjoyed the socialization. And I think the thing that I loved seeing the most about Lindsay there early in the morning was I also taught Algebra 1. So those are the freshman students who struggle with math, and there's Lindsay at the top of the math heap. She would volunteer to work with them. They absolutely adored her and would even jockey with each other about who got to walk with her to class during at the beginning of first period every day. Lindsay was brilliant, and she was resolute in taking advantage of the best academic experience. Her math thesis research was done at the Oak Ridge National Lab, where she used fractals to model the branching of the bronchial tubes. She went on to UT. She was a Haslam Scholar there, and they select only 15 of those each year. She majored in math, minored in Spanish, and did college summer internships at the National Lab and also at Vanderbilt Medical Center. In her junior year, I believe it would have been end of the junior year, beginning of the senior year at least, a professor who meant a lot to her in her undergraduate studies, who also had a handicapping condition, came to her to say, "You're the perfect candidate for a Rhodes Scholarship." And he felt that because he had been one. And so he began to advocate for her to make application to begin considering attending school in England. She was selected. She was, and to put this in perspective, that's only 32 each year selected from across the nation. And in local perspective, we believe, we've tried to research and have only found evidence of one other Rhodes Scholar from Oak Ridge High School. So she became the second, we believe. At Oxford College, she earned 2 master's degrees, one in applied statistics and the other in public policy. She interned with the World Health Organization during that time, and they later hired her as the technical director in the disability program. She loved it. She was in Geneva, Switzerland. She loved it. But the advent of COVID brought new concerns. And so she came back. She moved to Nashville and served as a data analyst for a startup healthcare industry business. But I learned that just this year, she has transferred to what she calls her dream job, where currently, I don't think this has changed yet, she works remotely to do her particular job with St. Jude Hospital in Memphis. All right. So now we're going to go back in time, Ray. We're going to go back to 1970.
Okay, to Bob Eby.
Bob Eby. And I have got to start this one. I thought about it, but I've got to start this one with Bob's dad, because I think he would love that I tell a bit of his story as well.
Okay.
His father was Ramon. Ramon came to Oak Ridge on a special assignment from the Army during World War II, where he worked in mass spectrometry at K-25. He was in college in Colorado when he was recruited. He was sent to North Carolina State to prepare for this new job in a secret city, Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Ramon was later recognized as the first person to observe and identify an unknown californium isotope in his mass spectrometry lab at the Oak Ridge National Lab. And it's no doubt that his father's passion for his particular work, influenced his son's decision to ultimately major in chemical engineering. In 1952, Ramon he actually volunteered to help start the gaseous diffusion plant in Paducah, Kentucky. And that happened to be the home place of his wife, Rosemary, whom he met in Oak Ridge. Bob was born only 4 months after they arrived in Kentucky, and he attended Kentucky schools through the 6th grade. The family returned to Oak Ridge in 1964, and Bob said walking into the Oak Ridge schools was just an awesome experience. He said, "I couldn't believe everything that they offered." And I quote him, "Kids my age in Oak Ridge had taken foreign language and band classes in elementary school. In Lone Oak, Kentucky, I was one of the smartest kids in class. Oak Ridge was different. I was put in some of the accelerated classes, but I did not make all A's." Self-deprecating. He made a lot of A's, I assure you. It made me realize, and listen to this for where he takes it, it made me realize how important a good education was for the future. So he completed a rigorous course of studies at Oak Ridge High School. And in talking about his schooling in Oak Ridge, he had numerous words of praise for so many teachers and the high curricular expectations that he loved meeting. But I'm going to mention one of his mentors, one of his memories, I should say. He enrolled in the Oak Ridge High School computer science course during his senior year. Now, this would have been, 69, 70. Think about it. Oak Ridge High School had an IBM 1620 computer, which was basically a Volkswagen-sized machine which processed code that was key punched on cards.
Yeah.
The technology of the day at that time.
Right.
That background under Oak Ridge High School teacher Barry Fernandez helped secure for Bob and other of his Oak Ridge High School classmates jobs in the UT Computing Center, including teaching assistants, in Bob's case and a couple of others, in introductory programming courses. And that was during their undergrad years. And Bob said, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thought I'd become a professor. But at UT, Bob chose an engineering co-op program, which helped him pay his way through school while he gained valuable work experience at K-25 in the development division for uranium enrichment. He began full-time work at K-25 in 1974. He married his Oak Ridge High School class sweetheart from the class of 1971, Jean Gronstrom, and began graduate studies at UT. And Jean also worked full-time. She was at Linden School as the beginning band program instructor, while they both went to night school to complete master's degrees. Over his storied career, Bob assumed a lot of assignments. I've got to go back to Ramon, though, and say Ramon and his wife, Rosemary, Bob's parents, had to be proud when Bob eventually became the manager of the K-25 facility in the 90s. But over his storied career, Bob assumed a lot of assignments within the fields of engineering and management. And I tried asking him to say briefly what it was, what his professional journey was, okay? Because his resume is unbelievable. Here's what he answered, and I quote him. I have worked and now consult in various uranium enrichment technologies, including gaseous diffusion, gas centrifuge, atomic vapor isotopes, and molecular laser isotope processes. I was fascinated when he told me of another one of his special assignments, because I asked him to name 2 or 3 assignments that really stood out for him. And I had no idea that he had done this. I'm going to quote from his story on this one, because I don't want to get anything wrong.
Okay.
Bob is especially proud of the opportunity he was granted to lead the first decommissioning of a research nuclear reactor in the United States. He said, the Georgia Tech reactor we decommissioned was built in the 1970s. We learned so much during this process, and the experience spun out many papers. One clear finding was that when future reactors are designed, it is imperative that the design accommodate safer future decommissioning. This Georgia Tech assignment won the State of Georgia Engineering Project of the Year in 2002, and the lessons learned were later employed in reactor decommissioning projects at the University of Virginia and the University of Michigan, both projects which Bob led. Several like projects sought Bob's expertise, including a year-long project that he sat in Winfrith, England, developing a decommissioning plan for a 300 megawatt reactor. Bob said, and I quote, "It was the first nuclear power reactor in the United Kingdom to be decommissioned."
Wow.
Bob's been honored with numerous science, leadership, and management awards, too many to mention here. In addition, he's gone above and beyond his professional life, his professional obligations, to strongly support public education. He served 4 terms on the Oak Ridge Board of Education before he was appointed to the Tennessee State Board of Education in 2018. But just in March, and that's when we published, Ray, if you recall, in March of this year, he was sworn in as the chairman of the Tennessee State Board of Education. His wife, Jean, retired after a long teaching career in the Oak Ridge schools, and their 2 children are both Oak Ridge High School graduates. I should say that I taught the children. They were absolutely wonderful. But I will also say to you that I taught Bob in my very first year of teaching. And I think back now and want to apologize to all of those first year kids, right? You learn a lot in the first year, but he was indeed one of my first year students. His story is so much more than I can tell here. It's almost bigger than life, and he's still as active as ever with his role as chairman of the Tennessee Board of Education. One especially endearing thought to me is when I was officially retired by the Oak Ridge Board of Education, Bob chose to stand up beside me. And that was so symbolic. It hit me when he walked up. I'm not going to cry. But here's my first student seeing me off.
How about that? How appropriate. That's good.
All right. And we just published 2-3 weeks ago now, I guess, Zafer Malaguer's story. And we chose to give his adult picture here. That's for those who knew Zafer, he hasn't changed much, right? His hair is just a little bit whiter. Zafer was born in Ankara, Turkey, and he followed the footsteps of an older brother who chose AFS study in America. The older brother went to Washington State. Zafer's assignment was in a city and state he had never heard of, Oak Ridge, Tennessee. He commented, and I quote him, "In 1972, there were no computers, internet, or social media to use as resources. And quite frankly, encyclopedias may not have been updated at that point, or provided much information at that point. I saw a computer for the first time in Oak Ridge. I did not know the significance of Oak Ridge." Recently, in recalling special memories of his awe for the town, he listed, and I'm quoting, "all the plants and the scientists, highly educated people around me, and the experienced and helpful teachers." His family assignment was with Joel and Jane Buchanan and their sons, Stephen and Joey. And we have earlier discussed or profiled both Stephen and Joey from the 70s. Both Zafer and Joey were seniors, and Stephen was a sophomore during Zafer's year at Oak Ridge High School, and that was 1972-73. Zafer found many things mysterious and quite strange in his first few weeks. And here are some of the things he listed: getting locked in more than one restroom due to not understanding the locking mechanisms, pouring orange juice over the first cereal he had ever seen. He learned quickly that one.
Yeah.
I would have to, I'm quoting him, "I would have to take either a burning hot or very cold bath for not being able to manage the faucet knobs." And he marveled at going grocery shopping because what he said about him at the grocery stores, there was so much of the food sold in boxes, not something he could identify with. And being a soccer player, imagine this, of his first Oak Ridge High School football game. I quote him, "I thought the players were astronauts in those helmets. In America, you use your hands in the game and you call it football?" He was awed by yellow school buses driven by kind women, unusual for him, who transported him to school. Oak Ridge High School classes he described as more informal, and the relationships between teachers and students was closer. Adding another memory, he said, "It seemed that American teams had more time for hobbies and recreation than was his experience." Zafer was an amazing speaker. And so he was invited everywhere to give talks. And And he spoke about his home country, obviously, but what made his presentations really special was he also entertained his audiences by singing and playing Turkish folk songs on his guitar.
Mhm.
He laughed, remembering some of the questions he was asked, especially from school children, if you can imagine, saying that he felt some of his audiences considered his cultural upbringing to be straight out of 1001 Nights, or also known as the Arabian Nights.
Mhm.
He answered some questions with humor, such as a student question asking him if they had camels in Turkey. His answer, only for the tourists. He also had questions about magic carpets and had he ridden one. Zafar completed the highest math and science we had to offer at Oak Ridge High School, and he appreciated the expert tutelage that his American family gave him. You know, it was difficult. He was an English-speaking student, but there was a lot of English to read with those courses plus English, etc. He had a scientist dad in Joel Buchanan, and his brother as his classmate, Joey. Zafar was active in the Model United Nations, the International Relations Club, Boy Scouts, and as known as the playmaker for the fledgling Oak Ridge High School soccer team. I believe this may have been its second year at that point. His AFS advisor, Frau Armstrong, Evelyn Armstrong, laughed when she talked about Zafar, when she was telling me something about Zafar. She said that for years after he was here, Oak Ridge High School soccer coaches would plead for her to find another Zafar in her potential AFS candidates. Zafar returned to Turkey, where he completed a degree in medicine. He specialized in colorectal, anorectal surgery, and hernia surgery. He was awarded the first International Bassini Prize, that's given by the American and European Hernia Societies, and he received that in 2000, first year. He founded the Turkish Hernia Society. He served as a surgeon, a professor, a director for special hospital programs, a researcher, and is an author, a prolific author. Most recently, he's become deeply involved in research in the nourishment of surgery patients. And his interest in this began because he had a second career through medical school, working in the restaurant business, becoming a catering manager. So he was very, very interested in foods. So this new research involves feeding orally, enterally, or parenterally, which is IVs, the last one, IV medications, nourishment. I'm quoting him now. I have founded the Nutrition Education and Practice Group in my medical school, and I have run the computerized parenteral solution facility to produce our own pediatric and adult formulas. That's the IV formulas. Right. Such formulas being of my own configuration. More recently, I have concentrated on feeding oncological patients in light of the new trends, namely less sugar and more fat. If I can just mention for a minute, I did say in the article that while I was writing his story, that horrible earthquake occurred in Turkey and Syria. And so I had a chance to ask Zafar about it. Their home was some 500 miles north and east, I believe, of the quake center. I was concerned, about him and his family. And he said, no, they were fine, but they had been busy at his hospital organizing a field hospital in one of the greatly affected cities. And his wife, who is an ophthalmologist, has been busy in the city of Samsun, where they live. And her case, there are a lot of refugees from the earthquake coming into the city without glasses that they need. And so she has been working diligently to provide those. So I would say that it's unusual that I would cover a student with only 1 year experience. How special this was for me, though. He was my former student. We reunited via Zoom exactly 50 years later, thanks to the Buchanan family. Zafer won the hearts of everyone who knew him, and he's still that same man. He was a young man when I knew him. He's still that same man, and he still appears very young at heart. I would say this about the AFS program, and I think I want to read this because I don't want to mess it up. This is actually nothing that I recorded or that I published. It's something that when I was thinking about this, I wanted to say, though Oak Ridge High School no longer supports AFS exchanges, and there's good reason for that. World travel has changed over 50 years for sure, right? I am most grateful for the experiences of having had several AFS students. Even though they're here for a year, they steal your heart. And here's the other thing they did for me. They brought different perspectives on problem solving, often due to their varied curricular backgrounds. They weren't just coming through the Oak Ridge system to me. They came from a different background. Their presence made me look beyond the constraints of an American curriculum and to infuse their skills and insights into a richer and broader problem-solving environment. They helped me become a better teacher, for sure.
Wow.
All right. So those are the 31, I believe, is what we've covered in this series, Ray, students. And yet I've also been writing stories from recent classes since the 75th anniversary of the Oak Ridge Schools book appeared in 2018. We've tried to keep up with succeeding classes. And I want you to meet these two from the class of 2022. Alex, she likes to go by Alex Shanafield on the left and Amelie Nagel on the right. Amelie Nagel on the right. What I want to do is a couple of quotes and then tell you about these remarkable girls. Alex said in her memories, she started at Woodland, as did Amelie, and they both went to Jefferson and Oak Ridge High School. Alex said, "I will never forget metamorphic rocks and my Woodland third grade teacher, Gail Fillers. Meta rocks are made with heat and pressure. We lived it by making s'more sandwiches, wrapping them in baggies, and sitting on them throughout a long dinosaur movie." Amelie remembered third grade. She said, "I will never forget my country's project in third grade." They were to select a country someplace in the world and do fairly extensive project work. She said, "I researched Ukraine." I got this quote from her in 2022, just 2 months after the Ukraine-Russian war began. "I researched Ukraine, the land of my maternal ancestors, and I reconnected to them." I asked about her family there, and she had not heard at that point in time about their well-being. STEM girls all the way. They went to first Lego activities at Woodland, continued at Jefferson. Jefferson got them hooked on coding, and later both became leaders in the robotics competition with the Oak Ridge High School Wildbot that you see there. Amelie was the principal coder. She took that to a different level. She developed an all-girls robotic camp, which she conducted online for 3 years, reaching 84 girls from 11 states and 3 countries.
Wow.
Alex was the engineer on the project, on the Wildbat project. Alex took her passion for not just robotics, but music and art and combined them with programming or coding. She created 3 different online classes during COVID confinement. And those classes at that point had reached 250 girls all over the world.
Wow.
Both were admitted to MIT. Not surprised, are you?
No, not surprised at all.
Yeah. Amelie is majoring in math and computer science. Alex in mechanical engineering and robotics.
Wow.
Watch out for them. You know, part of the reason I'd love to end this way is the future's still bright. I always said that in my classroom. It's still bright. Watch out for these world changers who both say they ultimately would love to teach.
Oh, how about that? All
All
right.
right. And we just published in mid-May the class of 2023. Aren't they good looking?
They are, yes.
Yeah. So let me start with Luca in the middle. Oak Ridge High School senior Luca proposed, and I talked to him when, you know, he had not graduated yet, that the COVID pandemic might just be how his high school generation will be identified and remembering. Certainly, if that is the case, the students of Oak Ridge High School class of 2023 have had their mettle tested and have emerged triumphant. What a great group of kids. Every time I do these new class stories, I want to go back in the classroom. I miss their energy. It was in their freshman year, which would have been 2019, 2020. We remember that year well, right? When Oak Ridge students learned during their spring break that they would not be returning to school for the remainder of that school year, for the remaining 9 weeks of that school year. Sophomore year, instruction was different because they had a choice of a hybrid schedule where they were in school in person 2 days with half of the school going to different sets of the 2 days, right? And then 3 days of their week, they were in virtual lessons. Or they could choose all virtual. And of this group, Kylie did choose all virtual, being concerned about the health situation. Their junior year changed again. So for their first 3 years, there was something new all the time. In the junior year, Oak Ridge High School created block scheduling courses, which meant you took an entire course credit in just one semester. Of course, the classes were longer, right? And yet adding the block scheduling option allowed for 8 course credits throughout the year for each semester. Finally, their senior year was, as one student described it, and I quote, our first normal year. Luca and his twin sister, Sophia, bottom right, were new to Oak Ridge High School their freshman year because they had their K through 12 education at St. Mary's Catholic School close by. And so I, talked to them about that, talked to them about, how was the transition or whatever. And here are the things that I found engaging about the two of them. Luca said, perhaps the greatest gift Oak Ridge High School gave me, I'm quoting him, was aiding me in discovering my passion for so many things in life. So Luca followed that with a list. His passions were history, theater, school political opportunities, which he served in many ways, and in general, his passion for reaching desired goals. During his sophomore year, loved, how they survived COVID in their own special ways. During his sophomore year of much COVID cautious confinement, although he was in hybrid schedule, right? He and his theater friends gave performances via Zoom technology that used scripts from old radio classics like Flash Gordon. Do you guys remember that?
Absolutely.
All right. And they recreated Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, right? But I'm sure with plenty of caution. So he also loved the stage. And so, yes, he was on the stage in his last 2 years, master's performances, including being one of the roles he loved the best was the rear end of I believe it was a unicorn, right? He loved Boys State his junior year. And he also loved an opportunity to serve as a page on the Tennessee Senate floor, during breaks in school scheduling. He aspires to a law degree and eventually a political career. And I have no doubt that he will make it.
Mhm.
Sophia was so much fun to talk to. Sophia touted a sophomore English class exercise, which her teacher, Mrs. Robin, I'm sorry, that was her name. Mrs. Robin had them reenact The Lord of the Flies before they actually read it. And what Mrs. Robin did was give them each an item, have them pretend they were on an island with just that item to use as survival skills. And she split the group up into smaller groups. So several smaller groups were to take their particular item and see what they could do to affect survival. Here's what she said: I love my teacher for doing this, even though the exercise fell into chaos due to her, Sophia's thieving group. She summarized saying, I'm glad Mrs. Robin had the patience to help us all understand the book much better than if we had just read through it. All right. Sophia aspires to a career in writing and voice acting, and she's already on her career, I think. She's already published her first book as part of her Girl Scout Gold Award. The book is Daisy Sisters from the Heart. Daisies are young, beginning Girl Scouts, right? Daisy Sisters from the Heart. It's available in the Amazon bookstore. The story stresses the importance of kindness to others, even when such well-meaning actions may not be reciprocated. All right, Mr. Blake Steed in the Tennessee Orange up there is headed to the University of Tennessee with a full tuition 4-year ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Corps scholarship. He's already ahead of the timetable because he made his 4th year at Oak Ridge High School a 4th different year. He elected to move on in his 2nd semester to Roane State Community College and began earning college credits since he had met most of the high school credits required. So he hopes to use the AP credits, his Roane State credits, to advance track him at the University of Tennessee to get his bachelor degree in finance, and then to begin, he hopes, his MBA before he must serve his Army service. Blake credits his interest in military service to his Jefferson Middle School football coach, Brian Wilson, who was a graduate of West Point and a very strong role model for Blake. Blake went on to play football at Oak Ridge High School, and he lettered all 4 years. This was accomplished with difficulty and determination, given that he suffered a season-ending knee injury and subsequent ALS surgery in his junior year. But Blake's a determined young man. He came back in the spring to run track, conditioned and run track in his junior year, and then went back to football in his senior year, but a second knee surgery in the 5th game sidelined him for forever from his linebacker's job. He received not only a football letter, right, but he stayed on the field on the sidelines as an assistant to the coaches. And he ultimately received an academic all-region football award in his senior year. Kylie Thompson loves the stage, whether she's on it or behind it, she says. She grew a resume of acting roles in Masker's plays And she advanced to new challenges as a student director in her senior year. She aspires to college studies in film production and/or audio engineering with minors in music, writing, and artist management. It's amazing what's out there now that kids can pursue.
Right.
Kylie took what I call the lemons of COVID and turned it around for the social and emotional life of Oak Ridge High School students. Kylie had a leading role in creating a group called Wildcats for Change, a group dedicated to positive advocacy for student engagement and involvement. The effort, initiated during her freshman year, was a prophetic response to student emotional and social needs. Wildcats for Change launched such activities as a back-to-school bash and game nights, encouraging student and faculty interaction, as well as working to enhance the school's physical environment with such as spirit posters and art throughout. And finally, Anshra Ajav, Oak Ridge Schools education, she said, began with an interesting looping experiment. I had not heard of this, and I actually went to teachers at Woodland to find out about it later. For the first and second grades at Woodland, she stayed with the same class of students and the same teacher for 2 years. And then for third and fourth grade, a different teacher and some different members of her class, but with the teacher again for third and fourth grades. And she said that she loved it, and she had much praise for those teachers and for the fun science experiments they created. She transitioned to Jefferson Middle School, and there she was offered accelerated placement in math and English. She participated in Math Bowl, Science Bowl, orchestra, Interact Club, and served as a teacher's aide. She said that in high school, the advent of COVID and concerns caused her to drop a lot of her extra activities, but she did play tennis. And at the time that I interviewed her in the spring, she was ranked #1 for the Oak Ridge High School tennis team. But at Oak Ridge High School, she was busy because she completed an astounding 15 AP credits. Think about that. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
4 of those AP credits were earned in her sophomore year on the hybrid schedule, which she described at hybrid schedule as being interesting with so much free time and an opportunity to work at your own pace. She contrasted that with the junior year that she said brought back hard deadlines and earlier wake-up hours. In fact, she wasn't the only one to complain about the earlier wake-up hours. She, along with her peers, learned implicit lessons in self-motivation and discipline during the varying learning environments they experienced. Anshra hopes that with her many AP credits, she can enroll in medical school early. She will start University of Tennessee, Knoxville next fall, and her career field of interest is leaning toward pediatric psychology. So these new graduates are just as amazing as all the years before. In case someone's saying, oh, it's just not the same anymore. No, it's different, but it's good different for sure. I loved, talking to them and hearing how wise they really, really are. This is Sophia's parting remark when I asked Sophia, what advice would you give to future Oak Ridge High School students? And she said, I'm quoting her, expect the unexpected. We can't control what terrible things happen. We can only control how we respond. See what I mean about wisdom?
I do. I absolutely do. All right.
Right.
That brings us up to date. and as you said, we meet our future in our classrooms through our students. I think you are exactly right in that.
And it's fun, and the future looks bright. Yeah, that's what I hope you heard. How many ways these few have given back, and there's so many more to go.
Oh, yeah.
So many more to find, Ray, and discuss. Yeah. I love this quote. And so when I gave a previous talk on this, I used it. One child, one teacher, one book, one pen can change the world. And if you don't know this young lady, she has achieved great fame, including the 2014 Nobel Prize at age 17. She was a Pakistani female who was literally denied of schooling as of age 10 by the Taliban. And then let's see, I believe it was, 2012, just 2 years before the Nobel Prize I mentioned earlier, the Taliban shot her as she was boarding a school bus to go to a school. And she was targeted because of the her female education activism.
Wow. Amazing.
So I feel so fortunate to have been a teacher. I mean, I can't imagine that it's possible to have as much fun and inspiration as I had in the classroom. Every student took a piece of my heart. And now they're giving it back in extraordinary ways. Thank you for this opportunity, Ray and Keith, to share.
Sure. Well, we
They are.
appreciate you being with us for these last few weeks or months, over the course of a couple of months, and sharing those great stories.
Thank you.
And Keith, she is going to put those stories into a book that will be published. And we are not through. I mean, we have more stories to go, and Benita is going to continue reaching out to these amazing, world-changing people that have graduated from Oak Ridge schools, and we'll continue putting them in Historically Speaking. And I'm looking forward to the book that maybe books that will be written based on your research and interaction with these marvelous people that you.
And Ray, we're always searching for more interesting leads. So contact through you would be?
Absolutely. They can contact me at draysmith@comcast.net is an email, or you can get through me at my phone number, 865-660-9527. We'd love to have any contact from any of you that have suggestions for people that Benita could contact and include. And I might add that some of the most interesting individuals have come to us just that way, Benita, by someone saying, "Oh, you're writing about these folks. How about this one?" And it's turned out to be a really good lead. So please don't hesitate to contact me if you've got suggestions you'd like to get to Benita. And we, of course, have this Hidden History series on YouTube, and it also has a Facebook page. So there are many ways that you can get to Keith or me, and then we'll get it to Benita, and she'll chase it down. She always does. And you have done a marvelous job of contributing this information that, unfortunately, without someone like you to do it, I'm not sure that it would have been captured in the fashion that you've done it. So I think it's tremendous. I really do.
Absolutely. Now, Ray, you're back, so I can tell people that you're out of town.
Yes, I was.
He's back in his house. Don't go rob him now. He's home.
I'll have to say I've had a wonderful week in Brazil, Belo Horizonte, Brazil. I went down there with the Tennessee Children's Home. About very quickly, about 12 years ago, we were asked if we would build a children's home there. There were so many young kids out on the street, and they were just they were in desperate need of some place to put these children.
Mhm.
So we agreed to do that. The board of the Tennessee Children's Home, which has children's homes in 4 locations in Tennessee, but we put this home down there. And this is my second trip to go down and just encourage the people that are doing the hard work there of taking in children that, if it were not for a situation like that, I'm not sure what would happen to some of those young children that are just not wanted. And some of them have difficulties, mental and physical, that cause them to not fit into their societies. But we're able to give them a place to help them to grow and learn and become useful and productive members of society. So it's a wonderful time. I enjoyed my time down there, and yes, I'm back now.
All right. Well, anyway, you since you were out of town, you asked me to go speak to E-Tech Friday morning, so I did have a few minutes. I went to E-Tech. I don't normally go to E-Tech, and for those of you who don't know, it's the East Tennessee Economic Council, and it is, if you're a mover and shaker in Oak Ridge, you're at the E-Tech Friday morning meeting.
That's right. Yeah.
Got
There'll
an
be
update.
over 100 people there every Friday morning at 7:30.
I got an update on what's happening at Y12 and some other things, but you asked me to go and speak for just a few minutes, and I did, just because we ran out short of time, about the new Oppenheimer film that's coming out next month. And so even though I've not seen the film, I've learned some things about it. And I think we talked about this maybe the last time we were on. But anyway, but one thing that I did tell them is that, and we can announce that in 2 weeks, on July the 8th, will be our next Hidden History. We have scheduled Kai Bird, who is the co-author of American Prometheus. It's
Right.
the book from which the Oppenheimer film was based on. Christopher Nolan based his script that he wrote for Oppenheimer on American Prometheus, like I said, co-written by Kai Bird, and he will be our special guest. I did read an article this week that he has seen the film, and that some of the comments, so I'm really anxious to ask him some questions about it.
I think that will be fun for us. I really enjoyed getting to meet him. We had him here for the gala event for the American Museum of Science and Energy Foundation. Right. And Dave Keim invited me to come to dinner with him. And I really appreciate Dave for that. I spent about 3 hours talking with Kai and just getting to know him and learning about his vast knowledge about Oppenheimer and about things that I'm interested in too. So we formed what I think is a good friendship, and as a part of that, I asked him if he would consider being a guest on Hidden History, and I'm so proud that he's agreed to do it.
Good. Well, we'll be back on July the 8th, hopefully. And I know he's busy right now, but he's committed to being with us. So that will be our next Hidden History in a couple of weeks.
And we should say, excuse me for interrupting, but we should tell people that we're going to have a 1 day early premiere showing of the Oppenheimer film at Tinseltown. So you can go to Explore Oak Ridge to learn more about that, and we'd love to have you there. I believe Katie's already rented 2 of the theaters, Keith, for that event. So it's going to be a fun time to get to see it at 1 day early, and maybe we'll have some other things that are going on that are associated with with the history of Oppenheimer. A very interesting person. He had, as you know, tremendous scientific skills. And his life is just a very interesting thing to know about. And my goodness, who could tell it better than Christopher Nolan?
Right, exactly. All right, very good. Benita, once again, thank you so much for the work that you've done and for sharing that with our viewers. We appreciate it. And Ray, we'll see you, and folks, we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Very good.
Bye.